you on our panel today. Luigi is the chair of the board of directors of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. Luigi is the former head of sustainable tourism development at the UN WTO, and actually one of the initial innovators of the 10-year framework of programs. So we're very pleased to have Luigi here today. Luigi's Italian. Welcome. So on my left here we have Dr. Peter Haxton, who is a policy analyst in the tourism unit at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, otherwise known as the OECD. Peter, let's see if we can make this work, also deals with entrepreneurship, SMEs, and he's worked previously for the development agency. I might have to abandon this. Yeah. And he's originally from Brisbane. Hello? Hello? Okay, let's try this. Next to Peter, we have Ms. Jane Ashton, who is the Director of Sustainable Development within the TUI Group, which, as many of you in the room will know, is now the world's largest integrated travel group. Jane works to reduce the negative impacts of the organization and maximize the positive benefits of holidays sold. And Jane is from the UK. Welcome, Jane. And finally, but last but not least at all, is Olivia Ruggles-Brisle, Director of Policy and Research at the WTTC, which is the World Travel and Tourism Council, which is runs the Global Leaders Forum and represents 150 of some of the world's largest travel brands. And Olivia's mission is to raise awareness of the economic and social importance of tourism. And Olivia's from the UK, so welcome too. My second job, after introducing this great panel, is to set the rules of engagement for today. So our job is to inspire, to make it practical, to have a conversation with you as a tourism industry about what this framework of programs is. Before I came here, I was talking with the Riviera Maya Hotel Association, and we had a cup of coffee, and the gentleman said to me, "You know, Luis, what you need to do is aterrizar los conceptos. You need to ground it in reality." And we're going to take away all the acronyms and really try to ground the concepts in something that hopefully you can connect with today. So this is the first time tourism's really had a UN mandate. This is really exciting for everyone here because you all care about tourism. This is the first time that sustainable tourism can say, you know, we have a Rio +20 mandate. We're doing what the UN has charged us to do. What does this mean for governments? What does this mean for NGOs? What does it mean for the private sector and for trade associations and for other organizations working in the field? That's what we need to discuss today. So we've got 15 minutes for each. Couple of questions which we'll pose to the panelists to try to get the conversation going, and then we're going to throw it out to the audience so you have a chance to ask questions to each. Not every one of you, but you will have a chance to ask questions to each of the panelists. We will be very firm on timing so we don't run over, and it will be about 15 minutes per panelist. So we're going to start with Stephanie.
I didn't really prepare a talk here, but I was asked to prepare the question, what would be the role of governments in enhancing SCPs?
Okay. Throw your whiteboard, Stephanie. Which Dirk told me I shouldn't do, but it's kind of the job of the moderator. So Stephanie, if we consider German travelers, you know, one of the largest outbound markets in the world, and also some would say some of the most demanding of environmental practices in the world. You're driving sustainable tourism responsibility. So I guess I'm interested from your perspective is what do you see as the role of the German government in pushing the sustainable consumption and production, pushing sustainable tourism forward?
We in the Environment Ministry, we really see the case in arguing, or our role would be arguing the case for SCP, demonstrating why sustainable consumption production patterns are important, for example, by reducing the negative environmental impacts. That's where we started. We also realized when we started working on SCP and resource efficiency, we also had to argue the case not only towards the industry, but also within the government. So we had to really introduce that kind of thinking within the other ministries by showing that this is not only about the environment, protecting the environment, or about social aspects, poverty alleviation, or maybe even a fair distribution of the benefits from tourism, for example, but it is also an economic case, because by reducing the resources you use, you usually also save costs. So that was our first step, arguing that within the government, making that a political goal, and then once we got the agreement within the government that SCP is relevant for us, we then in a second step try to approach the industries in manufacturing and also in tourism.
I don't know if it works. It's a pleasure to have you here. We shared yesterday that it has been said before that sustainable consumption and production is essential for attaining sustainable development in general. And governments play a very essential role towards this goal. I would like to hear from you which, from your point of view, are the main ways that you consider governments can accelerate the shift towards ACP in the tourism sector.
I think apart from what I just said, it's also raising the interest for consumers to do that, so to create a demand on the consumer side. We in Germany, we recently did a survey with consumers to find out what they think about sustainable tourism, sustainable travel, and the interesting result was that many people, they have some sort of perception about their way they're traveling, and they want to travel more sustainable than they did in the past, but they feel that there's not enough information on how to get the right product, and they don't know where to find it. So that's something we want to focus on now. We know there are lots of initiatives. Hotels do a lot, but apparently this information or the standards don't get across, so we try to work on now to make that link between the consumer and really the industry. That's one thing we want to focus on.
Now we would like to invite the audience. If you have any questions, we have two attendants that have microphones. We will, of course, take questions also at the end of the panel, but since each of them, of the MAG members here with us, represent one of the various stakeholders, whether a government or private sector, perhaps if you want to take advantage at the moment they are presenting, please go ahead, raise your hand, and we will provide a microphone. Is there any question for our government representative?
Or indeed, if anyone wants to respond to the question about consumer information.
Exactly, or you want to add any comment, we are very pleased to hear from anyone if you want to contribute to the discussion. Otherwise, we will do like in the school, we will choose people from the front row. We have a lady, please, microphone here.
Thank you. This is Carla Beluti from the IUCN Center of Mediterranean Cooperation. Just getting back from the consumers, let's say, behaviors and so on, to all the panel, I would like to say, how do you think the importance of that, and if there are some strategies or ways you are thinking on tackling this let's say, challenge?
would like to start.
Well, actually, what we do, that's we are conducting a workshop in about 2 weeks to speak to the industry and just to get their experience about the initiatives they already started, if they have the feeling that they sort of work, that the consumers are actually asking for it, and if they have the feeling that's not the case, we want to discuss with them why or what we could do as a government to actually enforce that. Is it just, you know, doing big campaigns or on sustainable destinations, for example, or examples for sustainable holiday destinations, or is there something else we need to do? That's something we want to find out now.
Jane?
Hi, I'd just like to say every year we do quite extensive research with customers in our 6 and 7 largest source markets on their latest perceptions of sustainable holidays and desires for sustainable holidays. That's in the public domain on our website. And what we've seen over the years is that, a good trend in that more and more people ostensibly say they're interested. These are mainstream holiday makers, not sort of hard and fast eco-travellers, the mainstream holiday maker. However, when they're actually booking a holiday, it's not what they're looking out for. They're more interested in price, destination, quality, but they do care, and it does attribute to brand trust. So there is a business reason for sustainability in the customer's eyes. They really don't want to go on holiday with at a hotel that's not paying fair wages, it's not treating its people properly, that's not managing its environmental impacts, etc. So I think the challenge for us in the travel trade, and I would first to say we haven't quite cracked it yet, is how to incorporate sustainability messages in a really inspiring, engaging way that really reflects on the quality of the product, rather than in any way giving people the perception that they might have to suffer a deterioration in their enjoyment or their quality by having more sustainable holiday.
Thank you, Jane. Olivia?
Thank you. I think there are some programs out there that are starting to really engage quite well with consumers on this, and the TripAdvisor Green Leaders program is one, and I know that comes with certain challenges around how they audit, but you know, the power of TripAdvisor is fantastic, and that power applied to sustainable tourism, I think, is something that we really need to look out for, and that's something that people should look at.
Luigi?
Last comment, so everyone will have spoken on this. I think there is also a lot to do in learning more on how to communicate sustainability. I still remember a case of a presenter, which I like very much, that said, if you put in your web, in your hotel, this place has responsible heating, people say, well, I'm going to get cold there. So present it in a different way, present it in a way that is positive, using renewable sources, present it in a way that adds to the quality of the experience, not present it in a jargon that almost no one understands, like sustainable tourism, etc., but present in a way that adds to the experience. And that will probably then also increase, I think, the share. We also did a research when we did this green tourism in the green economy together with UNEP, and we took stock of all the surveys that were done. And in fact, they give contradictory results. Some says that people are available to pay more for a green vacation, some says not. So it's quite a mixed market. But probably more needs to be done in communicating effectively and in a positive way what added positive experience a sustainable vacation can bring to the consumer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luigi. And actually, you're up again, because we're going to turn the conversation towards standards for sustainable tourism, which I think in many ways, you know, I'm a really great advocate for GSTC, because I feel like standards are one of the things that turns this really complicated thing into something that everyone can understand, because it breaks it down from this, you know, all these big words to a kind of to-do list, basically, for a destination, for a corporation, for a tour operator. So Luigi, my question for you is,
what do you see as the main indicators for sustainable consumption and production within the GSTC, and how are they useful for destinations that want to make the shift?
Thank you, Luis. Let me be just a brief introduction for those that are not familiar with the criteria. We launched in 2008 a set of 41 criteria for hotels and tour operators, and in 2013 a set of equally 41 criteria, similar in language, but of course with certain distinctions for destinations. Where do they come from? There was a long analysis that about 2 years of preliminary work, looking at all the existing certification program, looking at all literature existing, the UNWTO Green Book of Indicators and so on, and distilling them in 41 statements which make sustainable tourism understandable to all, to the consumers, to the traveler, to the small hotel, and to the big destinations. We then also assorted the criteria with a number of indicators. There are approximately 100 plus indicators for each set of criteria. And now coming back to your question, Luis, there are 4 blocks in each of this group. One block deals with the sustainable management. An hotel or a tour operator destination needs to have a system in place that is able to measure and to take proactive actions in increasing sustainability. A second block has to do with maximizing socio-economical benefit. A third block has to do with cultural protections, heritage protection, and then one that has to do with conserving resources. So this is, of the 4 blocks, probably the one that is closer to the objective of SCP. Conserving resources is a very wide, and there are about 12 to 14 criteria, if I recall correctly. Has to do with conservation of energy, has to do with increasing share of renewable energies against fossil fuels, has to do with water management, waste management, and so on. But also has to do with conserving biodiversity, with how to treat wildlife species, not to have captive wildlife species when this is not allowed, and so on. So I think that GSTC, which is becoming increasingly recognized in the tourist sector, can certainly contribute as a standard setting organization, an organization which is composed of UN agencies, but strong presence of the private sector. Jane, as a tour representative, is also in the board of directors of the GSTC. We have also many other members. So we see that a bit our role in promoting that particular part of the 10 Years Forward program.
Luigi, you cannot review it. No, you have a second question, so you're not done yet. By the way, he's my former boss. Anyhow, we are fully aware that you are one of the stakeholders that really bring a wealth of expertise and practical know-how to this Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee, or MAC. And based on that, we would like to hear from you. What do you think, based on that expertise you have and the know-how, what do you see, how do you see GSTC supporting destinations in general in accelerating the shift towards more sustainable consumption and production patterns?
All right, thank you, Sophia. Well, just this morning before I came, I had the pleasure of signing 2 what we call commitment letters, one with Fuerteventura and one with Catalonia, both very important destinations in Spain. Fuerteventura is one of the Canary Islands. This letter of commitment we signed GSTC, then Istituto de Turismo Responsable. I don't know if it's here, Thomas Ascarate, the president. Anyway, this is a certification program which is recognized by the GSTC. The GSTC does not certify directly, but we aim at the biggest number of certification programs in tourism meet the core criteria of the GSTC. So Biosphere, which is the certification program implemented by ITR, is approved by the GSTC. So we signed these 2 letters where these 2 destinations, the president were present, commit to undertake a journey towards sustainability, which has to do with the GSTC, and then as a next step, certification. That means it's not only your statement that you're doing well, but it's a third party, an independent audit that says you're doing well, and then you can display the logo of Biosphere, and in this case of the GSTC. We have also have another work with destinations where at the beginning we had the early adopters program, which we have done together with Sustainable Travel International, which basically testing the criteria for destinations, and 14 destinations all over the world, in fact, applied the criteria and gave us suggestions, and some of them then had a management plan. Now, and I'll conclude, we have in place a program which has two different proposals for destinations. One, what we call a snapshot assessment or diagnostic, is a 3 days, an expert of GSTC goes to the destinations, assessing against the 41 criteria, gives the destinations an idea of where they're doing well or where they're doing wrong. And then a longer assessment is about 10 days, where there is a kind of a more detailed analysis against the criteria. So this is, in concrete terms, what we are working directly with destinations now.
Thank you, Luigi. Again, we welcome questions from the public. If you have any questions for Luigi about the GSTC, the Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria, and the work they have been doing, please raise your hand. Peter? Microphone here, please. Should work.
Is it on? Okay, my name is Peter Prokos. I'm representing an NGO called Linking Tourism and Conservation. And I had the pleasure to follow for quite some years the GPST and also GSTC. And I wonder whether we need to discuss in common how we can simplify all these terms and all the pictures what sustainable tourism should be. I mean, we deal with the fact that tourism is the most diverse world in principle, and also the different sectors, what we decide is, or which we define is sustainable, is huge amount of diversity. So I wonder whether there are not ways how to simplify, or if you're talking about countries or governments or destinations, whether different countries cannot profile in a certain direction and make it simple for a tourist to decide to visit that country. I just give the example of Costa Rica. Costa Rica had decided on the highest governmental level to really focus on rainforests and the extension of national parks and tourism. And this is a very simple picture which people understand and which works in this country. So Costa Rica is the main destination if you are interested in the biodiversity, in nature, in rainforests, and want to do something good, you should travel to Costa Rica. And then
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. We'll have to
Is
stop
there
you
other
there in the
question?
interest
Is
of
there
the...
other, could, for instance, Germany, as we just talked about them, see a kind of profile, a simplified profile, which a destination could bring over.
Thank you. Stephanie, you want to answer? Germany has been called. Yes, Germany has been called.
That's actually a quite tricky question, I think, because it probably also depends on the destination, and if you have sort of probably, you know, what the character of your destination is. I would say, I mean, Costa Rica is really a best practice example, and the way they did it, I think, is marvelous, and we should all probably aspire to follow that quite stringent way they did it. On the other hand, if you compare Germany to Costa Rica, for example, I think you cannot compare it because we just don't have that kind of rainforest, that kind of biodiversity. We have different sorts of tourist attractions which are maybe from an environmental point of view not so prevalent as in Costa Rica, but nevertheless they have their own character. So I'm not sure if you can sort of compare, for example, the nature reserves along the Baltic Sea to our alpine natural parks and make, you know, one tourist or tourism criteria for it. I don't know if that's what you mean, but I find that difficult to sort of give one standard to different kinds of destinations. So, yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Luigi, I think there's another part of that question that could be for you, some of the other panel members. So the second part of the question was making it easier to select a destination. I thought maybe you'd have a comment on that.
Yeah, well, if I understood, it's about simplification, Peter. I think we attempted, maybe we were not successful, but 41 criteria, I think, is really a concise number of criteria. And again, I think distilled through a process which is a public consultation process. It was not just a group of people sitting there around the table. So simplifying means that you have a set of standards, understandable, valid for all, and that people can use to make a choice if you're a consumer, or to improve your sustainability if you're a destination, as I'm telling to operators. What I think, the complexity is not the tools. I think the tools, we have quite a lot of tools. I mentioned the UNWTO book in 2006. I think Eugenio Yunis is here. He has been one of the initiators of that work. Is an incredible reference. There are hundreds of indicators there. So you can really fish them, whatever you need. But what is more difficult is the process then, is the political commitment. You need political commitment. We had President of Fuerteventura this morning say, you know, years ago there was a plan where we had to build 65,000 new beds in Fuerteventura. We resisted that plan, and we didn't build 65,000 new beds in Fuerteventura. And now, and that is not, the island still has an economic benefit, because the quality of the tourists that go there, the expenditure is higher, etc., etc. So it's a political choice, it's a journey you have to undertake. And finally, of course, I mean, Costa Rica is a small country with an homogeneous destination. Germany or Spain or Italy, of course, they have a variety of destinations. But I think that approach that you mentioned at the destination level, I'm sure that can be done. Have a brand and image that hopefully will transmit a sustainable way of doing tourism.
Thanks, Luigi. Any other comments from the panel on this idea of the need to simplify terms? Have we got a chance for one more comment?
I don't have a comment on the need to simplify terms, but I think from a government perspective, there are also lessons to be learned from the example that you provided of Costa Rica, and they perhaps are looking to see how the decision was taken to focus on this one area. A lot of these decisions, I mean, countries make marketing decisions on a strategic basis. How was the decision made to focus on this one particular element? How does the government work horizontally and vertically also to ensure that they deliver what is required to support what is their core marketing appeal internationally? So I think there's lessons to be learned there that can be transferred to different governments. Examples of good practice in that area are always very welcome and very useful, I think.
Thanks, Peter. We're going to move on to the next topic, which is about policy. So actually I'm going to go back to you, Peter, because you deal a lot with policy work, you deal with data collection, you deal with analysis of information, which is all obviously really important when we're looking at making a big shift. We need to know where we are and where we're going. So could you perhaps help the audience understand what you see as the contribution of organizations like OECD to sustainable tourism, and specifically to the SCP?
Thank you very much. I think, in a nutshell, I think the answer from our perspective is a policy-focused organisation with an economic background is that we can help to mainstream the SCB patterns within governments, and also try to promote collaboration between countries. I mean, for those of you who aren't that familiar with the OECD and tourism with the OECD, we heard today that international trips have reached, what is it, 1.138 billion now. Within the OECD, unless someone can correct me, the OECD countries still account for over half of those. On average, tourism accounts for 4.7% of GDP, 6% of employment, and 21% of services exports. And within the OECD, and beyond, the Tourism Committee is working hard to mainstream the SCP agenda in tourism, which is necessary for sustainable tourism development, but is increasingly also at the core of competitiveness was obviously an evolving global tourism market. The Tourism Committee promotes collaboration amongst stakeholders for the improvement of the sector's SCP performance. We bring together 44 countries to the table within the Tourism Committee, many of which have varying policy agendas in relation to climate change, environment, etc. And it is in that environment where we work together to identify core issues, many of which touch upon those which are central to the SCP, to share data and experiences and good practice, and I think those are some of the core issues and the benefits that we can really provide there. We provide and promote evidence-based policy to support mainstreaming objectives, as I said. The committee actively promotes and has done for many years the sustainable economic growth of tourism via an integrated whole-of-government approach, as Morocco pointed out that they also follow. And where appropriate, we obviously work closely with other directorates within the OECD, drawing upon also the rich expertise and data of the other OECD directorates, including environment, education, on topics such as green growth, climate change, and innovation. As everyone in this room is aware, that one of the difficulties with tourism data itself is that it's inherently difficult to obtain and expensive to obtain at anything other than the national level. So we really do promote the tourism satellite account approach where it's feasible. We try to also promote and try to identify effective ways to measure the impact of tourism at regional level on a variety of different issues, whether it be from economic, social and environmental perspectives. Sorry? Okay. I'll just very quickly just comment on a couple of just some examples of the horizontal work that we've done of late, including climate change and tourism policy in OECD countries, which we did with UNEP, green innovation in tourism services, OECD Environment Performance Review of Iceland with a chapter on tourism and the environment. Okay.
Thanks, Peter. I think Sophia had a question that she's dying to ask you, so pass it over.
As we all know, OECD has a very important work regarding the development and of data, research, and advancing sustainable and tourism policies in general. And they are also aware of the importance of support policy decision making based on substantive data and research. And as you may be aware, we also have an initiative called Global Observatories of Sustainable Tourism Observatories, which was basically also born of the necessity of support decision making based on data. And in this regard, I would like to hear from you, Peter, based on your experience and the great work that OECD does. How can the exchange of information and data sharing among stakeholders, how exchange that information and data can actually improve the acceleration towards sustainable consumption and production patterns?
Thanks. The experience that we have in the Tourism Committee is that countries very much benefit from seeing examples real-world examples of policies and programs that have been implemented in other countries that have produced positive outcomes. And of course, inherently that requires that in developing those programs and policies, there has to be evidence-based for the implementation, and then evaluation upon or along the journey of the policy implementation. Because there's another important issue is that, and Charlie mentioned this yesterday, the process to be able to find real impacts from the implementation of policies is a long-term process. It can take many years, 5, 6, 7 years. So it's important to come up with the appropriate indicators early on to show that there are steps being taken to improve, that at a later date can then also provide you with the evidence to show what the real impacts are. When you're able to provide the examples based on evidence, they build a very strong case for duplication elsewhere.
Again, we would like to invite the audience. Thank you very much for being with us today. If you have any questions for Peter or any comments, anything we have at the back, please, microphone at the back.
Hello. My name is Julian Nunes. I'm Director of Promotion and Investments Tourism in Guinea-Bissau. I don't know if anyone knows where Guinea-Bissau is. It's one small country in the west coast of Africa with a lot of biodiversity. And we have been for 40 years of civil war, and now it's stable. It's, one of the strategies of our government is SAP on the 10YFT. What you need help, because we have been all these years with civil wars, and we have a lot of diversity. We have 81 Virgin Islands in 3 hours from Europe. We have the last chimpanzees in the west coast of Africa. We have elephants. We have a lot of research, but we need the help. We need to know how to get access to develop our country in a sustainable way. Sorry for my English, but I'm speaking Portuguese.
No problem. So Giuliano.
Yes.
Sorry, if I heard correctly, you're from in Western South Africa, is that correct?
Guinea-Bissau.
Apologies. One of the, I put my hand up and say one of the limitations of the OECD is that we're a member-based organisation, primarily highly developed economies. We do work closely with a few non-member countries also. So a lot of the work that we do may or may not be relevant to a situation in a developing tourism economy. However, I'd be very happy. In the first instance, what I could offer you is access to our work. Very happy to meet with you after this, to give you my details, and happy to provide you with any of the information that we have on our approach to tourism, strategy development, whole of government approach, and yeah, I don't know if I can add anything else at this moment to that. But please come and see me straight afterwards if you'd like some assistance in that regard.
Thanks, Peter. I think we have a follow-up response from Charlie from UNEP, or the 10YFP Secretariat. Thanks, Charlie.
Microphone here, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mentioned the Global SEP Clearinghouse. One of the functions of that website is to collect best practices. I have to say that our website is not working quite as well as it should be at the moment. It's going through an upgrade. But that is a place where we will actually profile essentially countries and locations that have used their nature to attract tourists. We're also in the process of looking at developing a flagship project which will probably focus around nature-based tourism in Southern Africa. These kind of projects, if you want to do them at scale, I mean, you have two options. You can try and do something at national level with some of your usual partners and donors, and then develop a project that way. Or if there are other countries in a similar situation close to you, you can go for a regional or a sub-regional project. What we find in UNEP is that if you could do something that's transboundary in a region, donors tend to be more interested. It can make your life more complicated in that you have to get 3 or 4 governments to agree on more or less what they all want. You know, do come and talk to me afterwards. We could talk about your situation. We know we have some activities in West Africa on SCP. It's not one of our strongest sub-regions for work, but there is a large EU-funded project called Switch Africa, which is a €20 million project which covers 6 countries in Africa. Burkina Faso and Ghana are the focal countries in Western Africa, and both those countries have chosen tourism as a priority sector. So there are 2 countries close to you that will be trying to do the same thing. So there might be some basis to develop some kind of sub-regional collaboration on sustainable tourism in Western Africa. And there may even be some finance in that project already that could help to do that.
Thanks, Charlie. We're going to move on to the next topic, which is going to be focused on the private sector. And I'm going to ask a question to Jane from the TUI group. Many of the audience here might be thinking, well, 10YFP sounds kind of like a UN thing. It sounds like a thing that governments do. Obviously, the TUI group has taken a big stand on sustainable consumption and production. So perhaps you could help us by explaining what's the return on investment? Why is TUI making such a big stand on sustainable consumption and production, and why should other tour operators and other private sector businesses get involved?
Thank you, Louise. Yeah, we have, well, I guess we've been working on sustainability at TUI for many, many years. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've been quantifying that more with quite hard and fast indicators and reporting quite transparently on our challenges, on the opportunities and on the progress. One of the key things that we have been doing with our supply chain is really promoting certification, and we have aligned ourselves with the GSTC position on certification and are in particular promoting the 20-plus certification schemes now which have achieved GSTC recognition. So that means their indicators are based on the GSTC 41 criteria, which Luigi mentioned. So moving on to return on investment, whilst we are promoting and persuading and actually now by means of, in our mainstream market, actually contractually obliging hotel suppliers to work towards certification, what I can say is on the several hundred hotels whose performance we track in terms of energy data, we've seen over the last 3 years over a 10% reduction in energy data over that 10-year period, sorry, 3-year period, and we work particularly closely with 40 or 50 hotels, and with those particular hotels, they actually achieved a 10% reduction in energy and water over a 1-year period. So you know what those costs translate to. It's a significant amount of money. So in terms of cost savings, it means a great deal to our hoteliers. The cost savings that we've actually driven through our own organisation, through our shops, our premises, our fleets of coaches, and crucially our airline, have amounted to tens of billions of pounds over the last few years. So there's a very, very strong business case from a straight financial perspective, but I think it's much wider than that. Hotels that we track who have achieved certification status, we can also track a higher customer satisfaction rating through, and that's on a wide range of data and a massive scale of data. We also track employee satisfaction. Employees want to work for a company that takes these issues seriously. We also believe it underpins brand trust. We believe it underpins differentiation. There's a whole range of business benefits that we've experienced over the years, which means we're accelerating our efforts. I'm not in any way claiming that we're there. We know we've got a long, long way to go, but we have experienced these business benefits, which again we do report on in more detail in public reading.
Thanks, Jane. Sophia also has a question for you.
Yes, you will have two questions. And I just wanted to say that, as it was mentioned before, in order for the Sustainable Tourism Program to be successful, the role of the private sector is key. We consider that the inclusion of the Sustainable Tourism Program as one of the initial programs that was adopted at Rio was actually a recognition of the tourism sector as a trigger of change, of behavioral and production change. With the rich experience you have in the TUI group and from the private sector point of view, I would like to hear your views on what do you think are the main opportunities and also the main challenges for tour operators in accelerating the shift towards more sustainable consumption and production patterns?
Well, on the opportunity front, I'd say there's a lot of tools that are now out there, a lot of processes and programs that are being reported on and can be replicated. So not only certification schemes, but also lots of pilot projects which are written up and replicated. And I'm looking forward to the launch of the improved clearinghouse website, which I think will feature a lot of those. I think one opportunity is the shift that I've seen very clearly over the last 10 years in terms of societal and consumer expectation of what appropriate standards are of a respectable brand or a respected brand. So I think that is an opportunity that whilst customers might not be knocking at the door for more sustainable holidays, they certainly expect high standards of the biggest brands in tourism on that front. On a wider societal basis, a number of countries now are introducing legislation for large corporates, certainly in Germany, in the UK, in France. We are required to measure our impacts, to report our impacts, and also report on our wider sustainability developments. So, and just on a final point, if I may, one key thing, and we talked about hotels, talking about the activities that customers undertake in destinations. We've done a lot of work with different partners and stakeholders in destinations, and partners such as the Travel Foundation, such as GIZ, such as Plan, such as the Code, on working on projects in destination, multi-stakeholder projects in destination to help build capacity for local people to get more involved in the supply chain, be it in terms of supplying hotels with locally produced food and beverage, in terms of developing local souvenirs, in terms of community-based excursions. And we've actually introduced a number of sustainability credentials as minimum standards into our excursion programs now. And those excursions, which have a very high local flavour, are also those that are actually bringing back the highest satisfaction rates. So another point on return on investment, I guess.
Thank you very much, Jane. Again, we have one question, please, here, the third row.
Hi, my name is Jim Sana with the World Wildlife Fund, and we're oftentimes at this nexus of conservation and travel, working with the private sector, from small 7/10 safari camps to large publicly traded travel companies that oftentimes have a institutional reluctance to increase regulation and are beholden to shareholders for short-term profitability. And so my question to you is, when it's easy to make a business case for saving energy, but what about those consumption issues that actually have an increased cost, like sustainable seafood sourcing, for example? that might result in increased prices to the consumer and perhaps decreased profitability on the part of the corporation?
I guess two answers. Just on your first point in terms of institutional reluctance to engage with sustainability. One of the things that as a large corporate we're experiencing now is that in the investment community, the achievement of being on the FTSE for Good, being highly rated on Dow Jones Sustainability Index. We've actually joined first on the Carbon Disclosure Leaders Index this year, and that's beginning to, I guess, drive a change in attitude at the highest level in terms of why these engaging with these issues are good for business. I didn't actually answer the question of some of the challenges for sustainable consumption and production, and I think some of the challenges are actually, it struck me when the other areas for the SCP program are being presented, sustainable global food supply chains, sustainable consumption, sustainable construction, sustainability in education. Progress on all of those will be absolutely critical in delivering sustainable consumption and production in the tourism arena, because I agree there's some real challenges there. The certification schemes that we use do address sustainable food sources and particularly an increase in locally produced foods, and that's one of the criteria to actually achieve the certification. But you're right, that the global food supply chain is a real challenge for tourism, and we've got a few pilot projects, one such as in Turkey at the moment, where we're working with farmers cooperatives to supply our hotels, working through the Truffle Foundation there, with farmers to supply our hotels with quantities of freshly produced food and vegetables. But yes, it's a global issue, and I'm not sure I've got the answer.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a key question. To the first part of your answer, I would say this report on tourism in the green economy basically demonstrates that return of investments in energy saving or in water saving are relatively short, an average of 2 years. A hotel that invest in improving their energy consumptions can start gaining, and therefore as an economic opportunity, same for water. Now, but you alluded to an important point. There are costs which are where you will probably need, in my view, an approach that includes the public sector. You have a direct cost for an enterprise that can translate in an indirect benefit in terms of more jobs in the destinations or less impact on the nature. These, we all know there are a number of costs which are not calculated, are not economic costs in today's economy, but they are real costs. Probably for those elements where the return of investment on sustainability is less evident, in my view, this is where the public sector should play a role. If, for example, in having certain subsidies or legislative easiness for certain companies where, for example, they create more jobs, I think this is where probably you will need a broader approach to sustainability and not have alone the company to support some of the costs that will translate, in my view, in benefits for the community as a whole. I think it's a good point, but I think the answer exists and will probably require more of a stronger public-private partnership on certain occasions.
Yeah, hi. I'm Director of Tourism from Goa. We're part of Incredible India. I look after the tourism department. I had a question. Basically, in Goa, we have about 30,000 rooms, which are in the small and medium enterprises sector. And when we talk of getting certifications or standards, how expensive is it for SMEs? And I mean, what kind of compliances are required? Because this is a very risk-averse sector. So I just wanted some information on that. Thank you.
I can't speak for all certifications. The one that that I'm most familiar with, because I've worked on helping develop it for the last 10 years, is Travel Life in the UK, which is a GSTC recognised certification. I think you're looking in the region of several hundred euros, so not massively expensive. In fact, Jenny is sitting right behind you from Chile, and he can tell you what the certification scheme that he's been developing is. It's not massively expensive, is it, Jenny?
No, it's not. Yeah. If you want to yes, thank you. Thank you, Jane. We have developed our own certification system on a joint venture with government and the Federation of Tourism Enterprises of Chile. Our system is at no cost, yet there is a verification process conducted by an auditor, and we've selected 6 auditing companies who conduct that work, and that has a cost. Which is subsidized by government. But all in all, must be around about $500, of which 70% is subsidized by government. In the case of small and medium-sized companies, otherwise it's 40% for large companies.
Yes, maybe it's also give me the opportunity, and you're probably aware, but the Ministry of Tourism of India, in fact, has adopted sustainable tourist criteria, which are almost integrally based on the GSTC. And I would like to recognize, I mean, you as representing an Indian destination, to thank your government for that. I think it's very important that this is not only a tool for private sector, but even important country like yours take that seriously. But maybe you may wish, since this is the political approach of your country, maybe you may wish to approach some public institutions to get some subsidies, because after all, what you're doing by certifying with one of the recognized GSTC programs, we are basically implementing a government policy. So this is just a suggestion, advice that you may wish to follow.
Thank you. We're going to go on to the last speaker, Ruggles-Brisle from the WTTC, who represents one of the largest tourism industry associations. WTTC is widely recognized as a leader in economic data collection and analysis. I think what's probably not so widely known is your deep involvement and commitment to environmental and social impact reporting and awareness generation. So I'd like to ask you what you see the role of WTTC in that area, and perhaps what you're doing to help your members, the 150 large members that you have, to make the shift towards sustainable consumption and production patterns.
Thank you, Louise. So WTTC is first and foremost an advocacy organisation. So we collate the views of our 150 members and translate them into one sort of clear voice, one clear message. And then we use that clear message to talk to governments. We provide a bridge between the operators and the public sector. So that's very much where our role lies. When it comes to sustainability, it's one of our 3 strategic priorities. We've done a number of initiatives over the years to communicate what the industry is doing in sustainability. So we have an awards program called the Tourism for Tomorrow Awards that does that every year. We facilitate our members to work together to find solutions to challenges in sustainability. So we most recently have developed we call it the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative, whereby 25 of our hotel members got together around a table and agreed on a common methodology for measuring carbon emissions. So those are sort of projects that are born from within the industry and help them find solutions. are really important. And we're currently doing some work around environmental reporting, so helping our members navigate the large area of environmental, social and governance reporting. Some of them are very ahead of the curve, some are not. So our membership spans all parts of the globe, with about 30% from the Americas, 30% from Europe and 30% from the rest of the world. But the last 30% from the rest of the world is actually the one that is growing most. So we provide support for them to get on the reporting, get them up to speed on reporting and get them doing it. And obviously within that, it's not just about reporting, it's what you're actually doing to report on. So mechanisms for measuring impact and communicating that. Because one of the things that generally speaking the industry is not so good at doing is communicating what it is doing. So our role very much is to support them in that.
Olivia, we take the importance of partnerships and working collaborative very important, as we may understand all the programs of the WTTC and including the Sustainable Tourism Program is that a collaborative undertaking in which members from different sectors, whether governments, non-governments, NGOs, and many other stakeholders get together and put their expertise, their interests, their competencies in order to advance the cause or the vision and the mission of the program. The work you do is very important. Advocacy is core, private sector is core. And based on the experience that you have, we would like to hear your views on what do you consider are the best solutions to increase collaboration and joint action, both of them, among stakeholders in the travel and tourism sector or industry.
Well, I think if you look at it from the sort of top level, I think there are three things you need to bear in mind. I think if you want to have proper collaboration that is equal and involves many different stakeholders, I think it's really important to have a common goal. And I don't just mean the belief in a shared mission. I think a tangible and easy, a goal that's easy to communicate, I think is absolutely vital, because everybody needs to buy into that. And I certainly think moving beyond some of the jargon is absolutely vital in that respect. I think people need to understand what the return on investment is going to be for them. And I don't just mean in terms of financial investment, but time, and certainly from a private sector perspective. While businesses are often very happy to collaborate, time is a premium, and they need to know that the time they're putting into a certain project, or by attending a certain meeting, or even answering a survey, is actually going to have some tangible results and some impact. I think you need to be able to show real impact in what you're doing. And I think, finally, it's about communicating what you're doing, and it's about having projects that can be easily communicated. And I think one of the really exciting things about the Sustainable Tourism Program is that it has the potential to do some really new projects that haven't been done before, to bring in new partners from the media or from large NGOs or whoever, and obviously the private sector as well, to do some new things that can be quite easily communicated to the rest of the industry, to consumers, and not just sort of tourism management plans, which are very important, but are not necessarily the most exciting things. So I think choosing some projects that are impactful and easy to communicate and are going to excite people, and therefore get people to be more engaged, I think is very important as well.
Thank you, Olivia. Questions? Here, first, second row, please, microphone in the front first, and then on the back.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Sam Shikomo from Namibia. Hi, Sophia.
Hi, Shem. It's so nice. We met so many. We worked together at UNEP. Sorry, I get so excited. It's a pleasure to see him. We were working together for so long. I haven't seen him. So nice to see you.
But I moved on from where you left me.
Yes.
I'm now Director of Tourism in Namibia.
I know.
Just a few general observations. We're talking about production and consumption. Those are economic things. And of course, they will have transaction costs. And if that cost is too high, there will be no action. Yeah. And so we have to consider when we produce, for whom are we producing? Do we know how to produce? If we are in the Western world, perhaps we know. If we are in the other world, do we know? Yeah. And then consumption. Who truly consumes? Is it the West or is it the rest? And what do we consume? What do we really produce in tourism, or do we simply consume an experience? And perhaps we may be talking to the wrong audience, because it may not be us that produces, we just consume. And that brings me to the next point, which is using tourism as a policy Trojan horse to affect the change you want to see in all sectors. Because tourism is pervasive everywhere, and it gives you quite a good argument to go into other sectors and start to deal with the change there at the cause. And by doing that, we may be possible to overcome the silos, for a lack of a better word, that we have because of our academic training and the disciplines that we serve. Because what I see is that here we've got the UNWTO, and I see UNEP here, but what about the other kids of UNEP? Do we have the CBD here, Convention on Biodiversity? Because they look at biodiversity of life. I mean, what are the issues there? What about the climate change colleagues? Because our consumption links to climate change. What about the desertification colleagues? That's UNCCD, because they are part of the land. And that brings us to the last point, which is culture. Essentially, we want to have a change in culture regarding production and consumption. Again, we have to ask, is the change needed in the Western world or in the destinations? Does West and rest really applies, since tourists goes everywhere? And so that means that perhaps, as was said, we must simplify the terms we use, and we must rethink everything and innovate. Last point you said there, to the land of the brave, Namibia, and of course to also engage in some touristic activities. We've been dealing with the issue of sustainability for quite some time, and there is some lesson to be learned, and the transition to the YFP will also happen in Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. A response from the panel on the how to produce, how to consume, who are the producers, who are the consumers of tourism, and how do we bridge that gap? Olivia?
Yeah, that's quite a massive question.
Yes.
I think that I don't think that tourism is just about consumption. I think there is a heavy production element to it. The supply side of tourism is very important, and I think by a destination that pays attention to this, to the supply side and the product that it is offering, is probably in a much better position to control the consumption and to develop its tourism in a sustainable way. So I think, yes, there's a lot more work needs to be done around who the consumers are and the West versus the rest question, but I think that consumption is growing massively all over the world, and therefore that distinction is not always helpful, because you run the risk of ignoring some of the fastest growing markets. So that's what I would say.
Peter?
I would just add that, yeah, I would agree. I mean, due to its transversal nature, tourism
touches on a lot of different related policy areas, and there's opportunities there, and there's a need to work with them to develop effective policy. And it's because of that transversal nature that, you know, that small benefits or small improvements in tourism can also have big impacts in other related policy areas. And I think that's a particularly important consideration in relation to the topic of SCP, because steps that we can make in tourism will be multiplied across a variety of different sectors also.
Thank you. Luigi, you want to add?
Thanks, Peter. And I think that goes to the point about tourism being the Trojan horse, which I think I'm going to hand over to Luigi.
Well, I think you raise a macroeconomic issue of how are we doing our economy today that will require a panel on its own.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 1 billion of people obese and 1 people will be dying of hunger. I mean, so these are the big questions that unfortunately we cannot address here, but I think they are there and needs to be addressed somehow. Going a bit more down to the issue of tourism, I see a partial answer to what you're saying, for example, in the way of producing, which in my opinion somehow close the circle of also when we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about the different pillars of sustainability, the socio-economical, the environmental. And it's a very simple constatation that when you produce locally in your destinations and you involve local people in producing, for example, a food which is served in a resort, in an hotel, I think you're doing a positive circle, because what we're doing, you're improving capacity of production of the local people. You're probably improving the standards, because hotel or resort of a certain number of stars will require certain standards, so you improve the capacity of work of the local people. You improve the economic input, the linkage, reducing the leakage of the money that goes out of the destinations, and you improve the experience of the tourists, because everyone prefers to eat locally. I mean, you don't want to have a bread or whatever brought from 1,000 miles, but everyone will appreciate to have some local food. So I know that this is a macro approach to the big answer you put, but I think if multiplied in thousands of destinations, that will probably trigger or help to do a change. And this is where I see the importance that you mentioned, and someone has mentioned, of the transversality of tourism. Because in fact, it impacts many other sectors. I made it simple, but it also has to do with transportation. You will need to transport that food from point A to point B, and you will need to have better roads and better tracks, etc. So I think there is a positive dynamics that can be put when indeed you start developing a tourism which is community-oriented, and it's not let's say, completely directed from companies outside the countries. And I believe for a country like yours, from Namibia or Guinea-Bissau, I really believe that tourism is a great opportunity. We're seeing many countries do it conflicts, and I think probably tourism has been the sector that was able to have one of the fastest recoveries, because it's not really capital intensive, a certain kind of tourism, and indeed can create a multiplying effect. So I didn't answer fully to your questions, but at least I think give some way of thinking at the macro level.
There was another question at the back there. Richard.
Yes, hello, Richard Denman from the Tourism Company. I wanted to take this back, I think, to the 10 YFP and to ask the panel what you think the 10 YFP program is actually going to do for you. How do you think you're going to benefit from this? I think Olivia started to answer this in what she was saying about projects and the idea that we do need some new innovative projects. And I would like to, I suppose, partially answer my own question by saying maybe what you're going to say is about the support and development of projects. If you are going to say that, I feel we haven't perhaps heard quite enough about how it is intended that these projects are now going to be identified. How are we going to work to find these projects and to support them? Are we actually asking for ideas and bids, or are you developing your own projects within the MAC and so on? So maybe you and WTO or Charlie could say something about that, and particularly bearing in mind what Charlie said earlier, that this is really now about implementation. Clearly, we do understand a lot of the issues, and you've articulated them very well today. But how are we going to move this forward? How is the 10YFP going to help, and what are we going to do about projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Charles? Microphone here. Microphone here at the front, please.
Thank you very much. Sam asked a question when he stood up, or he made the point that the projects need to be made loyal to what the recipient needs, and this is a fundamental objective of the 10YFP, and it has to be at the core of any project that there is a demand for it. We're committed to developing a demand-driven program. So, whilst we have a MAC and whilst we have leads and co-leads, they're framing it, they're lending their expertise, but they're not defining what the projects are. The projects are defined by those who need them. We have a trust fund. There will be a call for proposals. The first one went out on the Sustainable Public Procurement Program. We received 70 proposals for that program. Around 50 of them were good. We'll pick around 3, and there is $500,000 in the first call for proposals. The same process will be framed and led by the UNWTO and the MAC for the Sustainable Tourism Program, and we hope to launch that first call for proposals from the 10YFP Trust Fund in the next perhaps 3 to 4 months. And the proposals come from the ground up. So that's basically the first answer. We think the MAC and the leads and the co-leads will actually also, in many cases, know the people from whom the proposals come, and they will help to support the development of the proposals. And the other way is really the flagship project that I put up on the Caribbean. That project has been developed with a close collaboration of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and 2 or 3 large other states in the region. They are all ready to send letters saying we want this project. That is a discussion between those who develop the project and the ultimate donor. But we see that method of actually working in a region or in a country, designing the project, and then finding the donor to match it as another way to go. And then the third way to go is the one that I mentioned when I was talking about Switch Africa. There are these large regional development cooperation projects which have sustainability or sustainable development embedded in them, which have some focus on the tourism sector. And I can't remember how long ago, it was about a week ago, the UNWTO, in their role as the lead, publicized the call for proposals under Switch Asia. And there is a 19 million euro call for projects on SCP in Asia, which will focus on the 6 program areas of the 10YFP. So those are basically 3 ways that you can get projects from the ground up.
Thanks, Charlie. I'd also like to address the first point that you made, Richard. You know, what do the panel think they're going to get out of it? I'd actually turn that round. It's more, what can we, as the multi-advisory committee for the 10YFP, what can we do to help the promotion of the program? Now, I'm fortunate enough to work for an NGO, so we don't have to answer to any government. We don't have to answer to any shareholders. Our role is to serve the public good, to try to raise awareness of the need for sustainable consumption and production. And this huge benefit that we have now is that we're not, shouting in the corner. Now we have a UN mandate to do sustainable consumption and production. So this opens up a whole load of more avenues to make projects really serious, to take mainstreaming to another level so that we don't need to talk about sustainability anymore, so that we can just talk about doing good tourism.
Luigi?
Yes, a bit in the line of what Luis says. I definitely see an important step in recognitions of tourism as a tool for development. I mean, we can have maybe a starting point in 2002. The Johannesburg Summit was the first written recognitions of tourism as one of the sectors that contribute to development. then I think this is a strong legitimacy from Rio Plus 20. It is a slow process, but it is a process which hopefully will start turning, for example, the share of funding by multilateral organizations toward tourism. Today, this share, it's minimal. It's probably less than 1%, though many projects funded by the World Bank, by the IDB and others, do in fact include implicitly tourism elements. But tourism as such is gaining somehow a certain respect and recognitions. And definitely I see the 10 Years Forward program and the approval of sustainable tourism as one of the first 5 programs as an increased legitimacy of that. It doesn't come immediately, but we see that additional sources of funding are generated. I think it also gives maybe also a message to the outside world that almost all organizations involved in sustainable tourism are part of the MAC or the leads or the co-leads. I think it also shows a sense of unity and cooperation, which in my view will also be a positive sign to potential donors, multilateral and bilateral, to support sustainable tourism activities.
Thank you, Luigi.
So closing remarks from the rest of the panel on this issue.
Just one point on answering Richard's question. What do you most hope to see out of 10YFP? I was very inspired by Nadia's presentation showing the frameworks and the capacity that's being built within Morocco to manage tourism more sustainably on a national and on a regional level, incentivizing low carbon performance, introducing this into marketing materials, and really systemizing sustainability. It would be great to see that capacity for change being replicated in many other destinations. And as a tour operator, we can influence our supply chain, but we also have a vested interest in the sustainability of the context in destinations within which you operate, and that is under control largely of the government. So capacity building and replication of the sort of work that Morocco is doing would be great. And I think the GSTC destination framework and programs which Luigi expanded upon does actually help build that capacity too.
Yes, maybe in reaction to what you said from Namibia, why this process is also important for governments, at least from the environmental policy side, because I'm from an environmental ministry. For us it is important to also argue that tourism only is possible if you have a functioning environment, functioning ecosystem, because if your ecosystems or environment isn't there any longer because it's polluted, there won't be any tourism. So that's the argument for environmental protection or sustainable tourism from an environmental point of view. And as you alluded to tourism as being a Trojan horse, or how you probably manage tourism towards a more sustainable path, I think we had 2 good examples here. The one was the one from Morocco, how you can do that from a policy side, the development of sustainable tourism, and Costa Rica was mentioned as one example that sort of really had this specific goal. They want to use their rainforest as a destination, but they also want to manage it sustainably, and they put up a very clear framework how they want to do it, which is not only linked to sort of expanding the tourist product, but also to, restrict it in a certain way to not overuse the resource you're actually selling. So I think these are good examples on the way how you can proceed.
Thank you. I'm going to turn over to Sophia for final closing remarks, but just before we do, I do just observe that we've talked a lot about the environment today. I wouldn't want you to leave the room thinking it was all about saving water and saving energy, because really tourism is a very human thing. It's about us and it's about the people that we visit, and us being tourists and us being guests, and the social benefit that occurs when that really strong cultural interaction happens. So the World Tourism Organization today talked a lot about harnessing tourism as a force for good. Sustainable consumption and production is about making sure that that good is lasting, that these opportunities, these billion opportunities from all the travelers really are long-lasting, that those jobs are created, are good jobs, that they're paying decent wages, that they're providing benefits for young people, for unemployed people, for women, for disadvantaged groups. And I think that's where tourism has an opportunity to be a Trojan horse for other sectors, to provide opportunities to areas that otherwise wouldn't have them. So thanks, Sophia.
Thank you very much. In closing, I would like to thank, first of all of our wonderful panelists, our co-moderator, ITH for coordinator, Coralia, thank you very much for making this happen. To the wonderful team behind, from our team, to Christina, to Agni, to everyone that has worked very hard to make this happen. And most of all, to all of you for being here with us to discuss these very important issues for us. These are very exciting times for tourism, for those that really believe on tourism as a force of good. We really appreciate your presence here, and we would like you to have more information about the Sustainable Tourism Program. There are some flyers outside where you can get information about how you can get involved into this program. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send your questions to the email that is on the back of the program. Thank you very much again. Enjoy your afternoon and enjoy Fitur. Thank you.